Good afternoon. I think we should just starting, and we will spend quite a minute to introduce ourselves. But thank you for coming for our session, the panel session 3.4, equity and accountability in digital health and AI. And I'm the kind of the introductory MC. Then I will put all the job to the moderator, Dr. Samicha Agawal, and the panelists. Dr. Samicha Agawal is associate professor from John Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health at US. Please.
Okay, welcome everyone. I think we're going to get started. I'm really excited about today's panel. I think I'm sure everyone has been in multiple AI panels, since this is an AI conference. Today we're hoping to change things up a bit, and so if you're in this room, I'm watching you. Don't escape after I say what I'm about to say. We expect audience participation. At some point, we're going to ask brave audience members to come up on stage and participate and be part of the panel. We'll shut the doors after, so no one can escape. The focus of today's panel is really about equity and accountability, with a discussion on some of the foundational resources needed for digitization and AI. We have a number of speakers who bring really different perspectives, a feminist perspective, a donor perspective, more implementation, close to ground perspective. So I think you'll have a little bit of time to hear from the different speakers. From my perspective, I largely work with the last mile, and I think what I struggle with the most is, while AI is likely to transform healthcare, it's already transforming healthcare, and so much so in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, right? A lot of what the keynote speaker said is likely to be a reality in a few decades to come. And yet, the truth remains that in 200 years of civilization, a quarter of the population doesn't have access to clean drinking water. And so the question that I find myself asking is, how do we talk about AI, talk about the foundational ecosystem that needs to exist, but also talk about this last mile population that has yet to reap the benefits of basic civilization. And so I want us to be aspirational and inspirational, and then I want us to take a step back and be pragmatic and not think of that as being cynical, right? Because there is a difference, and I often get called cynic, so I'm making that distinction up front. And so with that barometer from cynicism to enthusiasm, maybe I will get an audience vote, and I want folks to look around and it's a binary classification, so think about it as where you are most comfortable. If you think of yourself as an AI skeptic or an AI enthusiast, so maybe first we'll say, who are the AI enthusiasts in the room? Come on, don't be shy just because I've framed it. Okay, great. So look around, keep your hands up. Okay, great. Please look around, because we'll ask the skeptics and the enthusiasts to mingle and talk to each other. And then who are the AI skeptics? Okay, great. And look around, everyone. Okay, great. Okay, so with that, I think I can get us started. We will first actually, I'm very, very excited to invite Lucy Comey to come to stage. And Lucy brings a brilliant feminist perspective to digital health and AI from Kenya. I'm asking each of the speakers to briefly introduce themselves very practically, so I'm not reading out a list of titles. Please, and can I have a round of applause for Lucy, please?
Thank you so much, Smisha, and good afternoon, everyone. Is it evening or afternoon? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lucy Comey, and I work for an organization called Zamara Foundation. So Zamara Foundation is a small organization in Kenya. We are based in Nairobi. We work with women and girls in all their diversities. So women who are coming from different backgrounds, whether they are with disability, whether they are living with HIV, whether they are from the informal settlements. So we work with these groups of constituents of young women and girls to just ensure that they have the political consciousness or the agency that they need to actually challenge oppressions within their context. So be it at the community level, be it at their school level, at the family level. So we just ensure that we build that agency for them to challenge, to speak about their own rights, to form their own, solutions and recommendations. So that's Zamara. And today, I'm actually privileged to be here to just speak about what we do and how digital health, the gaps within digital health system in Kenya with a feminist lens. And this will be a bit biased because it speaks about the gender divide and the gender gaps within the digital health systems in Kenya. Maybe just to begin, in terms of course, we all know that digital health and AI they are working for the better, but do they actually really represent the realities of these communities that we often think as an afterthought when it comes to the design of this AI, these digital health platforms, and these digital health systems? And so the goal of course, for this panel and the discussions here is to just see how we are bridging the gaps, but also how we are creating solutions, especially to bridge the gap within how the access to this digital health and AI among the marginalized communities. And so we've interacted, maybe just to go back a bit, we've interacted with a few of our constituents, and some of the issues that they're bringing forth is when it comes to them accessing, for example, the information around their menstrual cycle. So there's apps like menstrual tracking tools where they are able to now look at how their menstruation is, when is their next flow and all that, and also just getting information about how to take care of themselves during this time. And so the gap here that was realized was that some of these applications really require fast speed internet, and most of these young women are coming from the rural areas where these speeds of internet are really not, the bandwidth of the internet is not really fast. And so that's a limiting factor when it comes to now them wanting to even speak to a counselor, or even beyond the menstruation apps, the other life-saving apps that they would need to actually speak to a counselor, ask for advice, and that the speed of the internet might actually be a barrier. So what does it look like in terms of the digital health journey, and how are we progressing? So just to mention that Kenya has made some progress, some few progress. Of course, we are so far behind in terms of technology and AI and digital health, but we've made some progress when it comes to some of the platforms that we have flagged. Of course, these are some of the examples. There are many, many other platforms. One is the MTIBA. MTIBA is it's a health platform that allows low-income users to actually save for their health. So it's a platform where you can save small amounts of money until you raise some sensible amount of money to either cover your insurance or cover your expensive medical bills. So MTIBA has really gone a long way in terms of just ensuring that it caters for the local, the community who don't have that kind of, resource to just one-off pay for their insurance or pay for their medical cover. The other one is the e-National Health Insurance Fund. This is it's a digital registration platform where public health insurance can be easily accessed. So you log in, you download the NHIF app, and then you log in your details, and then you can actually get in touch with the customer service one-on-one, but also it's easily accessible. Unlike you going to town, commuting to town, going to access this service physically, taking the long queues, it's actually an easier way of getting the insurance on your phone. We have many other applications that we have developed over time that actually improve the level of access when it comes to health, not just the general health, but sexual reproductive health as well. And a fun fact, just to mention that in Kenya, about 43% of the population don't have regular access to internet. That is quite something in terms of the divide when it comes to technology and how we are advancing. So we are still far behind because it's over 40, almost half the population don't have access to internet. And so in terms of even the financial barriers and the long distances, how do we design now these platforms to actually cater for this 43%? Just a key takeaway here, we cannot assume that just because digital health exists that everyone can access it, right? So true equity really means that we are building solutions that work for people at the margins and not just it's not a privilege, right? And so why some of the digital health risks, of course, as much as we have progressed, as much as we've achieved some of the milestones when it comes to some access gaps, we still have a long way. And some of these risks that are coming with these platforms and these advancements that we have do pose some risks. And one of them, maybe I'll just mention maybe 3 or 2. One of them is data privacy. And we've seen this in apps, of course. I'll just use the same example of the menstrual tracking apps that we use or that our young women in the communities use. These apps normally, there's a way they can leak your information, for example, your email address, to a third party, for example, and then you get advertisements, you get misinformation, and you don't know. You're subscribed to a mail list, you don't know how you got there. So data privacy is really an issue when it comes to some of these platforms. Also, profit over people, and then here we are talking about the costs. These platforms are usually coming in pro versions and free versions. So if you need extra services or you need that, the extra additional information that would then mean it's meaningful for you to actually have that, you have to pay for it, for a pro version of the app. So that's also a gap when it comes to, the risks and the access within these platforms. So why do we care as feminists and as women, of course? We care because feminists challenge digital health systems that actually ignore women's health processes, priorities, lived experiences, the ones that exclude digital leadership meaningfully, the ones that really prioritize speed over safety. So we are all about challenging that. We are all about bringing solutions that are addressing these women's needs, that are responsive to women's needs, that we are addressing also the underrepresentation of women, especially in the tech industries and the developments of this app, these platforms. So we are challenging that. We're also challenging the systems that prioritize efficiency, that prioritize speed over safety. And this can create a one-size-fits-all, and that is usually not the case because we have very different realities of people. So just in a nutshell, the gaps that we have currently in Kenya when it comes to digital health, one is the access. Of course, I've spoken about the access when it comes to many women and girls don't have smartphones. They don't have reliable internet connection. And this really limits how they actually interact with the digital health system and the digital world. There's also the issue of limited awareness when it comes to digital rights. Young women, and generally just the girls, adolescent girls at the community, they don't have the information of is data protection my right? How can I share my data? What steps do I need to follow to ensure that my data is safe? So those information are lacking, and this is a vulnerability that can be taken advantage of by third parties to spread misinformation and all that. Yeah. Concluding. So it's also the other gap is also importing solutions from other countries without adapting them in the Kenyan context, and that means that often these interventions don't address the real needs and the real realities of women and the issues that we face as a country. So these are some of the local solutions that we've seen and that I will share as examples. I've spoken about the MTBA. MTBA is the local app that it's a saving app. And so this is a local solution because it demonstrates the potential of a tailored, contextualized solution that brings forth the needs of the constituents, the communities. They need to have a platform that is relevant to them, that they can save, that is working for them. We also have the community-based initiatives where they're using platforms like WhatsApp to share health information and services. Kenya is a devolved health system where we have a national government, a county government, sub-county, and the community health units. So how the information trickles is through such platforms like the WhatsApp, as well as other tools that enable the community health volunteers to actually go or coordinate the community health volunteers to do maybe awareness campaigns or door-to-door services. Women in tech. We are increasing women participation in tech, ensuring that they are inclusive initiatives that actually build the capacity or strengthen capacities of young women to actually be the ones to form their own solutions. Who do we hold accountable? Who do we go to when it comes to some of these issues? One, of course, we have the government, and they have a mandate of protecting our data and ensuring that there's equitable access to these digital health technologies for all the citizens, regardless of whether you're at the margins, in the rural areas. So that is the role of the government, and we need to hold them accountable. The other people, the tech companies, of course, how they design, how they include, how we co-create, co-creation of these platforms, these prototypes, these initiatives. Then that will then mean that they are responsive to the needs of this context that is in the rural areas, for example. Feminist movements, of course, these are also some people to hold accountable. We are also holding ourselves accountable because it's our role to actually advocate for fair, inclusive digital health systems, create more awareness, bring forth the need for this to happen, actually. And finally, What can you do? What can I do? One, advocate, of course, pushing for more policies that protect women's digital health rights. Of course, I'm biased to women and girls, but of course, it's everyone. It's in general just ensuring that the policies that are there to protect our data are implemented at the different countries that we're coming from. Two, support. We contribute to the local women-led tech. How we contribute either by providing resources. Resources can come in many forms, either capacity building, women-led tech projects, or just highlighting them, promoting them. Thirdly and lastly, educate, empowering the communities where we are coming from, those who don't have the privilege of actually going to school to learn the tech and everything, just providing the basic information of their rights, how they can protect their data, how they can be part of the movement to advocate for responsiveness of these digital health systems. That was my time. Thank you very much.
Great. That was some really strong framing. I think I really appreciate also a close to community perspective. It really sets our baseline of some of the very real challenges, right? I think something that really I take away from Lucy's presentation is about 50% of the population lacks access to internet. I'm sure it's much higher in the female population. And internet is one, and then fast data services and the costs associated with that. Financial power is maybe next. And then also, I think you laid out really nicely the race, and we've seen that in the last week. It's really been the prominent theme with DeepSeek of speed over safety. And so hopefully we'll have a chance to unpack a lot of this, a lot more over the next 90 minutes or so. So with that, I will invite Alvin Marcello to please come up. And Alvin, 10 minutes, please introduce yourself before. Thank you.
Thank you, Smisha. Good afternoon, everyone. There's a timer here. I have 3 bosses in the audience right now, so I have to behave. Smisha is my editor-in-chief, Leo is my senior in medical school, and Dr. Bonchai is my chair in the Asia eHealth Information Network. So my talk is about 2 levels. It's like a sandwich. There's a higher layer and there's a lower layer and a lot in between. I'm going to talk about the gaps that we see in our government-led digital health transformation. And a very controversial statement I'd like to start with, that the greatest opportunity or risk for fostering an enabling environment for equity and accountability in the digital health and AI systems that we're building lies in good governance. And we had a meeting about 2 nights ago, and Smisha and Leo said, too much governance, too much governance. But I don't think we can really escape, because government was elected, government officials were elected into position to carry the will of the people. So we can't really, they can't wash their hands and say that I don't have to listen to the people. This was a concept that we developed way back at AHIN in 2012, when we started asking ourselves, why is our e-health back then systems not really working very well? And we realized after 10 years that it's all about governance, making sure that decisions are made by the right people. And one of the key decisions they need to make is what we will all build together, the blueprint or the architecture. And then once you have the blueprint, do you have the right people and competent people to build what's on the blueprint, and finally the standards or the shared building blocks to be able to develop interoperable systems. And while we're talking about equity and accountability, I'd like to share the hyperlink is on the right side. We'll share these slides with you. The 10 commandments of ethical medical AI, that must be recognizable, which part of a decision or action is taken and carried out by AI. It must be recognizable which part of the communication is performed by an AI agent. Sometimes you don't really know. The responsibility for an AI decision, action, or communicative process must be taken by a competent physical or legal person. In fact, in the Philippines, AI cannot make a diagnosis because our law states that only a licensed medical practitioner can make a diagnosis. So every time somebody tells me that my AI can make a diagnosis, I basically argue and say you can't. You can make suggestions, but only a human that's licensed can make a choice amongst those questions or even reject all of the suggestions because only a human, in the Philippines, I don't know in the other countries. AI decisions, actions, and communicative processes must be transparent and explainable, which is hard. AI decisions must be comprehensible and repeatable. An explanation of an AI decision must be based on state-of-the-art scientific theories, must not be manipulative by pretending accuracy, must not violate any applicable law, and must not lead to human harm, shall not be discriminatory, and this applies in particular to the training of algorithms, and target setting and controls and monitoring of AI decisions shall not be performed by algorithms. So those are the 10 commandments. Now we go to the 7 deadly sins. And this is an ongoing survey. So if you want to participate and have a say in this survey, please click on the link. Deadly sin number 1, blind trust to AI. Number 2, overregulation. Number 3, robotizing and dehumanization. Number 4, wrong targets in optimization. Number 5, over-informing and false forecasting. Number 6, application of a statistic statement to an individual case without a human in the loop. And number 7, self-reference or AI-based monitoring. And to that, we'd like to promote to the audience to consider the health data governance principles. 3. In whatever we do, in whatever we develop, in whatever we consume, that we make sure that we protect the people. Number 2, make sure that we are doing this to promote health value, not economic value. The economic value may follow after the health value, but never the economic value first before the health value. And then the third one is prioritizing equity. Make sure that the vulnerable and the marginalized are not left behind. So to that end, the Asia eHealth Information Network, we came out with what we call the call to action for countries to make sure that the governments are set up to maintain that safe environment for digital health in their country. And we call this our gaps to call to action. I'll go straight to the call to action. So for letter G, or governance, we call upon the governments to establish a governance mechanism that ensures equitable access to digital health through multi-stakeholder coordination and global coordination. Easier said than done, but at least it's been said. Governing body, institutionalize an independent governing body with a legislative mandate and defined structure and roles at the national and subnational levels. And the third is a person, somebody who is going to be responsible in making sure that this governance is translated into concrete, doable actions for the rest of the country to follow. A chief information officer or a chief data officer, coordinating the mechanisms and making sure that the different agencies of government are working together. Working together on what? A blueprint. There should be a shared blueprint so that even as the different government agencies are working separately, they are actually building interoperable, coordinated components of their respective mandates. So there should be a blueprint. This blueprint should be able to show everyone the alignment of what we are separately building that will work together in the future. And then we have to put the cost behind it. Because in the end, these agencies will have to put their words behind what their commitments are, and they should be putting in real $1 million monies behind what they committed to be their part of the blueprint. Finally, when you have the blueprint, you need to make sure that you have the right people that can build components for the blueprint, from the Ministry of Health, from the Ministry of ICT, from the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education. And for this, we think we need the countries will need a coordinating body, In the States, they call it the Office of the National Coordinator for IT. We're calling it the Program Management Unit. Whatever you want to call it, this is the group that will coordinate the different agencies. And then finally, a digital competency framework so that everyone from the community to the bureaucracy are knowledgeable about what digital health is all about, what is privacy, what is security, and what are their responsibilities to each other. For people creating a digital culture to undertake advocacy campaigns, promote the use of digital tools and solutions that are responsive to the needs of families and communities, and enforce protocols for user-friendly digital health tools and education. And finally, the technical people. This is the only time that technologies come into play. Establish a technical working committee on national health data standards to develop and create an ecosystem for adopting and promoting standards, adopt proven standardized health data minimum data sets, data dictionaries, and the required middleware, and a fund to make sure that all the components needed for interoperability, the use of standards, are made available. So we hope that with the GAPS framework, that the countries will have their own distinct journeys. We will be following different paces, but more or less, the members of the Asia eHealth Information Network are appraising and updating each other on what's happening in our respective countries and how we can help each other. So last year, we had Mongolia and the Philippines conduct what we call a convergence workshop, where the Ministry of Health called upon public and private sector and said, hey guys, listen, this is the strategy, and if you want to help in this strategy, raise your hand and let me know so that we can coordinate our work. And that's basically what we call a convergence workshop. So you can download the GAPS call to action over here. And if you have further questions about how we can help create that public-private collaboration within your countries, you can approach us after the session. But we hope that the message that we would like to impart is that that's just one layer of the sandwich. The other layer of the sandwich will be the second part of our panel, where we need to hear the voices of the people. Because in the end, government is just structured governance elected by the people. So later on, Smisha, we will have the people speak out. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvin. And so we're really going from identification of the challenges to now talking about some of the fundamental steps that we have to start thinking about. And we've heard about this. Do we have any volunteers from the audience that can tell me what GAP stand for? I'll take away the answer cue from the screen. Anybody? This is, I told you when everybody came in that we have audience participation. That was my, please, thank you. Please. No, you can't give away the answer, please.
The first is governance. Although I want to add government leadership to that G.
Okay.
All right, so governance.
And you're getting feedback, Alvin.
Yeah, the second is architecture. The third is people and something management, people and process management, and the last is standards and interoperability.
Great, thank you. Thank you, and thank you for humoring me. I appreciate that. Okay, so with that, we next have Leo. Leo, I would ask you to please come introduce yourself, and maybe I will just say that I've had a chance to talk to Leo the last few days, and I'm so excited to have somebody who only does AI, but I would classify you as a skeptic, Leo, but maybe you're both. Okay, please come and introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I wanted to clarify what Alvin said earlier about me complaining about governance. I'm complaining about governance being dished out by the same people year after year who don't acknowledge that the governance that they have laid out have not been working. Because the problems that we see now are the same from 50 years ago. So somehow there has to be an owning of the problem, an acknowledgement that we have failed in providing better governance. Okay. With that, my name is Leo Anthony Selly. I'm a medical doctor. I still practice in the intensive care unit at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Research is at MIT, and I think our group is renowned for sharing an electronic health record data from patients who are admitted to all our intensive care units. And this is everything that we collect in the ICU, from the vital signs at the bedside monitor, to all the lab tests that are being drawn, to all the notes written by the doctors, the nurses, the social worker, all the consultants who are part of the care, to all the images from the x-rays. And they have been de-identified. And they have been available for 15 years without any adverse event. So tell your privacy lawyers that they are wrong. And they need to know what are the consequences of not sharing the data. Because not sharing the data is killing your patients. And when I ask the privacy lawyers, well, what can you say about that problem? And they say, well, we're not paid to protect health equity. We're paid to protect data privacy. It's not our concern. That's not our job. Anyway, well, I'm just gonna do this. So I'm gonna start with a statement that I'm hoping everyone here takes with her or him when they leave this room. AI requires a redesign of our systems for education, innovation, and regulation. And this is the legacy of AI. It's made it crystal clear of what needs to be done. And what needs to be done is recode the world. AI cannot do that. Remember this, a system that cannot be fixed without AI cannot be fixed with AI. You cannot use technology to fix broken systems. You could use AI as a catalyst to push for changes in the system and to help facilitate the changes. But AI itself is not the solution. And AI, as we are seeing, is being weaponized to enable systems of power, as with all technologies that come before it. We do not have an AI problem, we have a people problem. We need to fix the human problem. So, AI differs from all previous innovations and technologies in that it is very broad in applications. It is truly threatening to upend every sector of society, from healthcare to law enforcement to education. And because it is very broad in its application, this will be very challenging to regulate, to oversee. And I keep saying that as a clinician, I don't understand all the technologies that I use. And in case you do not know, majority of the drugs that we prescribe, we actually don't know their mechanism of action. Even paracetamol or acetaminophen, most of the anesthetic gases, even the ones that we think we know, like, oh, ACE inhibitors, they inhibit ACE, except that the ACE levels actually come back to normal a few weeks after you start an ACE inhibitor. But we still prescribe them because they work. The difference is that the technologies that we use, the drugs that we prescribe, the application is quite narrow. And for that reason, we could sleep well at night knowing that some organization did its job to make sure that those technologies, those drugs, those medical devices are safe. But the biggest difference between AI and other technologies that come before it is that AI is inequitable by design. It is inequitable by design because we train AI on historical data. And we know that historical data reflects structural inequalities, hierarchies of knowledge. And if all we're doing is dumping gobs and gobs of data, even if the data comes from LMICs, and then seeing what sticks in terms of accuracy, then we are doomed because we will be permanently entrenching all the problems that we have in our systems. Health data, as the building blocks of AI, assumes that it captures the ground truths about health and disease from around the world. Of course, that's not true because 4.5 billion of people do not have access to healthcare. And the ground truths about their diseases are not reflected in the AI, in the training data that we're using to build AI. And now we're trying to convince them that we could sell you AI and substitute that for your lack of access to community health workers and doctors and nurses. It's obvious that that's the capitalist narrative. We can't give you doctors and nurses, so we're gonna sell you a product that was trained in high-income countries, and we want you to buy that from us. Like, there's something very inherently wrong with that mentality. The other misgivings that I have is that people are racing to build models. Look at the curriculum for machine learning. It's all about how to do exploratory data analysis, how to build XGBoost, how to create convolutional neural network, without teaching the students how did the data came about. We just completed a survey of machine learning courses online, and not a single one is allocating a module on making the students pause and think, who collected the data? Because the data was not collected in a neutral space. It was collected from observations of individuals who have their own biases. And it unfolds, AI, as with science, it unfolds in a non-neutral space. Non-neutral space in healthcare specifically means that there are stronger geopolitical, cultural, commercial forces that eventually determine what is the patient outcome. And all of those are missing in the data that you're using to build artificial intelligence. The favorite analogy that I often use is that of a drunk man looking for his lost wallet under the lamppost in a huge park. And a cop comes up to him and asks him, "Is this where you lost your wallet, sir?" And the drunk man said, "No, officer, I did not lose it here, but here's where the light is. Why should I look for my wallet in the dark?" And it's the same thing with AI, where we are building AI using digital data that is available to us. And it doesn't really represent what we need to represent for those patients who are in the dark. So November 2022 is when OpenAI released ChatGPT, and it is the fastest adoption of any technology that is seen by humanity. Within 5 days, according to Sam Altman, it reached 1 million users. Within 2 months, 100 million users. And very quickly, the Game of Thrones started operating. In the United States, you see the formation of oligarchies, data oligarchies, techno oligarchies, who now have control of the vast majority of data. So colonialism became from land grab to data grab. That is now the new oil that is being pushed and that is being sold. So I'm going to give just one example of a study from our group that nicely, I think, describes the problems that we see with AI in terms of how it is being developed now. This is an evaluation of GPT-4, which comes from OpenAI, and we asked GPT-4 to give us differential diagnosis. What are the possibilities for this particular patient? If we give you the details about the presentation, about the lab test, about the vital signs. And what we did was we used case vignettes, so descriptions of cases from the New England Journal of Medicine, and we gave GPT-4 exactly the same paragraphs, except that each time we were changing the sex and the race ethnicity of the patient. So when we gave, oh my God, it's almost zero. I'm just gonna say that depending on the race ethnicity or the sex of the patient, we got a different answer. So for a patient with a pulmonary embolus, with a blood clot in the lung, presenting with shortness of breath, if the patient happens to be a woman, GPT-4 started saying that this could be a panic attack or an anxiety disorder. That differential never shows up if the patient were a man. And then when we gave GPT-4 the case of a college student with a sore throat, everyone gets a diagnosis of strep throat unless that college student is Black and male. It starts thinking that it's gonorrhea or it's chlamydia. And when we looked at how does the world look like to a large language model, so we look at the prevalence of different diseases in Wikipedia, in PubMed, in Reddit, and it turns out that it is not an accurate representation of the prevalence of diseases. So the societal biases were definitely augmented. And this is no surprise because it's using these data sources for its training cohort. So I'm going to stop there, and I'll be more than excited to listen from you because I'm here not to talk. I'm here to hear your concerns and hear your potential solutions to the problems I laid out to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Maybe I think just to add to some of the points that Leo made, he talked about we don't know the mechanisms of drugs as clinicians, but we know they work. And maybe I'll add is that with AI, we may often don't know the mechanisms, and we're not focusing enough, and we're not talking enough on where and when it works. And I think that's fundamentally problematic if we're not actually talking about not just when it works, but in what cases, what sort of context it works. And I think from a methodological standpoint, the field of pharmacoepi is well developed, right? It has been around. We are using those same methodological approaches in dealing with other community-based studies. And that's fundamentally for health systems researchers it's posed a problem. With AI, it just puts it on steroids because it is an ever-evolving landscape, and our approaches that are available to us to evaluate them in real time, not in computer models, but in communities where we can see the translatable impact is very challenging. So with that, I will invite our last speaker, Marylise Gorens, to please come up, and please introduce yourself, Marylise, and look forward to your talk.
Hi, everyone. It's strange to be on a stage, on top of a stage. I don't know if you also had this. It's nice to be with you today. My name is Marylise. I work at the World Bank on all things digital and AI in health, education, and social protection. So the few slides that I prepared today was really to share with you things that we have encountered in our conversations with governments. As you can imagine, there are many conversations ongoing about AI in health. Should we use it? How do we use it? What do we need to regulate? What does accountability look like? So my presentation, given that there's already been 3 presentations that focused so well on equity, I think my presentation is probably more towards the accountability side, because those are some of the questions that we ask ourselves. How can we help in the development assistance that we provide to governments? How can we ensure that we invest and work with governments as they invest in AI and health in a responsible way? What does that look like in this time of discovery and innovation in which we find ourselves? And I want to start my presentation with this title of a blog that was quite thought-provoking when I first saw the title. And what this really refers to is that the space and the time in which we find ourselves in AI, which is really an age of discovery, also means that we're still at a time of regulatory uncertainty. In the United States, there are 126 different AI solutions that are medical scribes that somehow collect, transcribe, summarize medical information, clinical information, and in encounters between clinicians and patients. None of those have FDA clearance at the moment. There are those who argue, on the one hand, that FDA clearance isn't needed, and there are some who argue that it's very much needed. But the point is, in this space of uncertainty, doctors carry a certain responsibility, and as we see so many technology companies joining the healthcare space, many for the first time, this issue around where the responsibility lies is a really fundamental issue. In fact, in this blog, Sergey made this really good point that until the liabilities and responsibilities of AI models for medicine are clearly spelled out via regulation, The default assumption is that if any doctor is that if AI makes an error, the doctor is responsible, which makes adaptation, and I think at this stage that is a responsible position to have, because we're still in this age where we don't yet know what works and how it works. But so it really comes down to this discussion around what is responsibility and where do we invest and what is it that we can responsibly apply in our practice at the moment. On the other hand of that scale, we shouldn't do anything because the regulations are unclear. On the other hand, you also have folks who say that soon it will be a violation of one's Hippocratic oath not to use AI in one's medical practice. This was a very interesting quote by malpractice lawyers, a very well-known malpractice legal firm, who wrote in 2019, long before ChatGPT came out, that when AI-based technology becomes the standard of care, the liability of medical providers for failing to adopt it, especially when it could have prevented harm, can be significant under malpractice law. Again, I think these are questions. The reason I'm putting these quotes up here is that these are questions that we fundamentally need to answer. In fact, in this analysis that was done and published just a few months ago, we can see that even for those AI-enabled medical devices, just over 950 that have already been cleared in the US and many in Europe as well, you can see that there are some challenges with what evidence was provided and how that evidence was collected. My point is that we cannot talk about accountability without considering these dimensions. And then I would say, I think if regulation is still something that very much needs to be figured out and is an urgent priority, post-market surveillance is an even bigger priority. This is a study from the Netherlands. If you read what all the SRAs, the significant regulatory authorities, are saying, it is that in AI, strong post-market surveillance, in other words, surveying and tracking and monitoring what solutions the AI provide after clearance has been granted, is going to be absolutely essential. But for that, you need access to good data. Here you can see just how few and the areas of weakness in this survey of AI-enabled medical devices that was done in the Netherlands. If we take a step back and think not just within the health sector, but in other sectors as well, financial regulation, the education sector, the social welfare sector, this is a question that the World Bank has looked at in the last 6 months in some detail. We published just in January this year this report on global trends in AI governance. The QR code is there if you'd like to have a look at it. And basically the point that we make is that regardless of the industry you're in, there seems to be 4 approaches to AI governance. The first is industry self-governance. Here is a set of regulations that we all abide by. Secondly is a soft law, a set of non-binding principles and technical standards. Third, regulatory sandboxes. And last, a hard law, such as, for example, the EU AI law. We're not suggesting in this report that one is correct and the other is not, because every country and every sector of society in that country is at a different place, and there may be different regulatory imperatives in the education sector compared to the health sector. But these are important questions that we believe that governments need to address, this issue of what does AI governance look like. And let me say that in the health sector, I believe we should not just think about governance of AI, we should also think about governance for AI, other areas of the health sector that may need to change because of AI. We should think of governance with AI, and we should think of governance by AI. All 4 of those areas are absolutely essential. And of course, the higher the risk, the more the human needs to be in the loop. Lastly, just to say that in order to get this right, if you look on the left-hand side, here are some of the dimensions that we feel, as is captured in that report, that is absolutely essential when we think about AI governance. And these apply in the health sector, they equally apply in other sectors. I would also say then on the right-hand side, what are the foundational and fundamental things that need to be in place if we're going to create a world in which AI has its rightful, useful, and productive place in society without causing harm. The first is digital infrastructure, providing reliable internet, advanced data systems, and the compute that is needed. I would say that in the 21st century, where we find ourselves, it's an absolute travesty that 43% of Kenyans don't have reliable and affordable access to the internet. In fact, in low-income countries, 1 gig of data at the moment costs 11% of monthly GDP per capita. The total transport costs to go to and from work every single day in a month in those same low-income countries costs only 9% of monthly GDP per capita. As long as it's more expensive to pick up your phone than to travel to and from work every day, we will never realize the benefits of AI for those people who can benefit the most from it. With that in mind, the second foundational thing that we think is really important is human capital. We as humans cannot be in the loop, on the loop, through the loop, involved in and driving and directing what AI looks like for us if we are not, if skills have not been built. And last is local ecosystems. I believe that the best solutions come from people who understand the problem the best. And that means homegrown private sector. It means homegrown innovators. And for that, a homegrown local ecosystem of innovation is important. And last, just to say that if we get this right, I believe that we will create a society in which we are neither stifling innovation with over-regulation, nor doing harm because of a complacent and lackadaisical lack of regulation. I hope that's useful for the discussion. Back to you, Smisha.
Great, and that was a really great summary, Marlies, of everything. So I think with that, I'm going to invite audience questions, and I have one question for our panelists. We're going to keep audience questions short, and after that, we're actually going to turn over to little group discussions and invite audience members up to the panel. So questions, clarifications, comments, please.
Thank you very much for very great presentations. I'm Ridwan. I'm working with UNICEF. I'm mostly working with Alvin on try to improve governance in government sectors. But again, I think one thing that my question is to the audience is, AI majority led by private, and we know how difficult the governance is, something that's really behind compared to others in terms of digital works. I think Alvin knows about it. This is something that you're always chasing the tail, all the technology leapfrogging. We are basically like maybe a frog. That's happened. But again, how do we govern this? It's not really, for me, it's really challenging era. But of course, challenging in me, but we need to do it. There's no way we can't do it. This is something that we need to invest. So what's the priority? How do we invest on this? And then maybe this is also a call for others as well, that I think governance is something that really need to invest, because all things happening, if we don't have something to regulate or to govern that, it's going to be really, difficult to manage later on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there other questions or comments before? Please. Okay, so I will turn that question over to I mean, there are a number of questions there about governance, about investments. So I'll just ask, and a number of folks on the panel have spoken about that. So please, Alvin, you
Thank
can
you,
start.
Ridwan, because he mentioned my name. I
Yes.
think I'm accountable for that. I don't know the answer to the question. Sometimes in AHIN, we've seen stories go very well, and suddenly people are replaced after the election, and then we have to start all over again. And so I think after 4, 5 cycles of these elections and people getting change, our lesson in AHIN is we just need to continue supporting the new ones and basically give them a backgrounder of what has happened since the beginning from your predecessors, because the predecessors don't actually orient the new ones. So there's a big loss in institutional memory. They forget about projects that were started in the previous administration but were invested on. And so they want to change the name of the project, they can, but you can't change the source code or you can't change the people that are building the system. So there are some nuances about when newly elected officials come into position. They want to have their own brand, they want to have their own, leave their own mark. But at the same time, leaving your own mark, it's not the same as changing the application from one application to another application. It's basically starting from scratch again. And so what we learned, at least in the Philippines, I'd like to speak for my country. I don't know, maybe other people in the audience can speak about your own country, is that we just have to persevere. Civil society has a big role. You cannot be quiet and you cannot be like, okay, whoever is the leader again, we will just follow what you're going to tell us what to do. You need to write the letter and tell them, can we make a presentation back to you? Because you have been a member in the previous administration and we had these projects before and we have made investments already in the private sector that we are already implementing on the ground, and we'd like to support you. But we'd like to find a way, following the blueprint that was approved in the previous administration, how can we work together? So my quick answer to the question, civil society, you have to stand up. You have to speak out and you have to tell them what you can do and what you can offer to them to support the new administration, because they need your support. But they need to hear that from you. And of course, they need to ask that from you as well. And that's why the convergence workshops is our methodology for that. Make sure that the new government can announce, we have a new brand. This is our digital health program. Can you help us? And then you just raise your hand. Yeah, this is what we can do for you.
That's great. Leo?
So I would urge everyone here to stop focusing on the what. What do we do? We need to focus on the who and the how. And the who means truly bringing people with different lived experiences. And the how is truly bringing people who think different. Because what we've seen in the large organizations, so yes, we have representations of people from Sierra Leone, from Laos, but these are people who train in the US, in the UK. And for that reason, they have the same training. They're not going to see the blind spots. So we really need to look around and make sure that you are immersing yourself with people who's going to push against your ideas. And that's what we are really promoting among our students. Like, be comfortable with being challenged, because being challenged and being wrong means you're going to learn something new. Most doctors want to be the smartest in the room. I want to be the dumbest in the room, because it means that I'm going to be absorbing more. I'm going to be gaining more from the experience. And the way we are pushing for this is, as I mentioned this before, we try to teach epistemic humility to our students. What does epistemic humility mean? Because I've always been asked that phrase. Epistemic humility is acknowledging that your worldview, which is the product of your upbringing, your experiences, your access to information, could all be wrong. And for that reason, you're going to seek plurality. You're going to be seeking people who don't think like you. And I love the saying that if everyone is thinking alike, it means no one is thinking. Because if everyone had been thinking, they would have noticed right away, oh my God, we're all thinking alike here. We're all in our bubble. We're all in our echo chamber. We're not seeing the problem in its entirety. So one thing that we have been really pushing for is to bring voices to the students. And how many policy-making bodies would have students sitting at the table? Most of the time we say that, they should touch grass first because they haven't seen the world. But the way they think is very different from ours. And for that reason, they're going to come up with all these new ideas. And that's what sustains me. So I told earlier that I am both a skeptic and also an optimist for AI. And I'm saying I'm an optimist because I travel every month. And I make it a point to talk to the students. And I make it a point to make the students feel that their opinions are valued. And the passion and the creativity that I witness is just mind-boggling. Like, it's what sustains me in these darker times. And we need to really leverage that if we are to make some value of this piece of a technology. Otherwise, if we keep thinking in the same way as in the previous century, it's not going to work. And this is why I think that this requires a little blowing up of existing structures, because the existing structures have been stifling. It's not regulation that's stifling innovation. It's the existing structures of governance that have been stifling, existing structures of education, existing structures for innovation that have been stifling the value of creative thinking. And I keep saying that our educational institutions have sucked the curiosity, have sucked the joy of learning from our students. The students are all just focused on passing the next exam, how they do in their standardized tests. And this all reflect all the way now to healthcare delivery. So unless we change that, unless we completely overhaul the curriculum from kindergarten all the way to undergraduate college, there's no hope for AI.
Thank you, Leo. And I think maybe with that provocation and encouragement to hear from, I think it was really hear from the people, right? Because then I think that's why we started with Lucy, because it really sort of brought home the need to ensure that we are grounded in reality. I think we started this conference with a futurist keynote. Right? And now we're saying, what about now? What about the last mile? So I think if it's okay, we will turn over to the audience. Can I ask everyone to please stand so that everyone can be comfortable in moving around? We'll lock the doors in the back. Nobody run away. Thank you. Okay. So we'll, everybody please stand. We're going to have some time for discussion. And I'm asking everyone to stand so that people feel comfortable moving around. And could this side of audience members move to this wall and that side of audience members move to that wall? Please take your personal items with you. Okay, and our panelists will join the audience now. And yeah, the rapporteurs can sit. Please don't be confused. We're going to do five groups. And so I'm asking folks, I'm telling you the topics now for 5 groups. So the first question is what can we do for last mile populations, okay? So I'm letting you think about which group you want to be part of. Last mile populations. The next question is on data privacy. The third question is the colonial view, of a lot of which Leo talked about data ownership, sharing, and use. Last mile approaches, data privacy, colonial view on data ownership, sharing, and use. The fourth question is futurist thinking. If you had $500 million, what would you do? Where would you invest in this space? Okay, and the fifth question is how do we engage the private sector? Or how do we regulate the private sector? So with that, can I have everyone who's interested in last mile approaches go to the far end of the room for the discussion? Okay, everybody, and with Alvin, okay, to last corner of discussion. Everybody who's interested in data privacy discussion of how do we facilitate and what are some of the issues around data privacy, to that back corner of discussion, maybe with, you want futurist, okay, Bunchai, thank you. On that corner room of discussion, you can turn chairs around, that back corner. Colonial approaches, data sharing and data ownership, data aggregation. In the middle and maybe facilitated, okay, Bunchai is data privacy in the back, okay. And let's do the futurist view in the front with Leo. In the front right corner is the futurist view. Everybody, you can start moving, please. So, and the futures view is 500 million. Everybody wants the 500 million to invest. Okay, great. Especially the young people, they want their $500 million to invest. We see priorities. Okay, private sector engage. Thank you, Marilise. Private sector engagement right behind the rapporteurs, please. Private sector engagement. Private sector engagement right behind the rapporteurs. The one in the middle, Lucy, please facilitate. The one in the middle is data ownership and sharing. Okay, so just to summarize, last mile approaches, Alvin in the back. Data privacy, Boonchai in the back. Private sector engagement, Marilise in the front. 500 million to invest. Leo and the biggest group who wants all the money. And then I think we have a little group in the middle that's interested in colonial approaches to data sharing with Lucy and Debbie. Debbie, please raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, great. So you have 20 minutes, okay, to bring up your discussions, bring up your concerns and solutions. And the Futurist group, please, blue sky thinking. No pun intended. please wrap up your last comments. We have 30 seconds. Okay, wrapping up final comments. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Okay, 2 more minutes. And no more. It's 29:43 at 27:43. Okay. Only Professor Leo has asked for 2 more minutes, so he's got 30 more seconds. Time out, time out. But the session's not closed yet, so please, the door is still locked. No escape. We're reconvening. Yes. Okay, the 5 million group, you have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Well, so can we give our audience a round of applause, please? That was great. Yes? Okay. Great. So I see we still have some comments here, but I'm actually first going to invite the panels. The presentation's still ongoing, so it's not done. Don't leave the room. I will ask first the data colonialism and approaches to ensuring data ownership, data privacy. I'll ask that group to please, if there are any volunteers from there, to come up first. But if there are others in the group that would like to come up, I invite our audience to please come up and join the panel just as people settle. If there are other members of the audience who would like to join the panel to talk about any of the points. Thank you, Debbie. Can we have a round of applause for Debbie, please? Okay, great. So, so Debbie, are there others who would like to join us? Yeah, please come. Please. Great. And do we have others who'd like to join us? You can step down when your point is made, and we can have a fishbowl style where people can join the session. Can I ask folks in the back to please stop the talking? Hey, guys, everyone, thank you. Thank you. We're back to the session. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And can we ask that the group in the back by the door, please? Let's stop. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alvin. Okay, I see that was a lot of fun. So I think our mission has been achieved here with our audience engagement. I think if your points were not made on your panel, on your little groups, thank you. Okay, if your points were not made on your group, I invite you to please come up and join our panel. I will ask our new and changing panelists to keep comments to under 2 minutes, please. We want a democracy here. So Debbie, please, I would love to hear what your group spoke about. And please come on up. Okay. I see we have many professors in the room who are pushing up. Democracy is an illusion. Please come up.
I believe people were voluntold, not
Voluntold.
volunteered.
Yes.
I think in our group we didn't get to solutions, I'm afraid, because we just talked about what we were scared of
and
what our worries were. We were talked a lot about how we're worried that data is all being owned by the big four. They have the mechanisms to collect the data. They're going to own all of the data. It's not going to be representative of us, but it is going to be our data, and it's going to be used in ways that we don't necessarily want it to be used, which is basically to make 4 people extremely rich. And so we're very worried about that. No solutions there yet, but we'll keep thinking about it. There were also a lot of worries about more in the clinical setting and the usage of data. We were speaking about how can we help we need to own our own data, but in order to do that, we also need to help patients to understand why it's valuable to give their data in, and we need to build trust so that they feel that they can give their data in. So it's not just a case of saying everyone will own their data. We also have to think about, okay, but the data is still valuable to us in the work that we're doing in our research. So how do we get people to give us their data and for them to trust us with their data? There was also quite a lot of conversation about a worry about a lack of personal touch in the clinical setting, that doctors and nurses are going to start using AI so much that the human element of care is going to disappear. And there was a big worry about that, as well as if everyone can just go to ChatGPT and write an essay, then what are people doing? What is actually setting one person apart from another person from an educational perspective? And how are we advancing critical thinking if now something that took us so much time previously can be done at the touch of a button?
Thank you, Debbie. And so all great points. And I think stating the problem and stating the fears is really the first step. So that's really helpful. The way this is going to work is if others would like to add to Debbie's point, counter, add, you're welcome to come up and join. And then when our panelists feel like they've said what they came to say, they're also welcome to stand up and leave. So it's free flowing. I'll turn over to you next.
No, thank you very much. I was in the private sector group. I've taken some notes. Now, I think first we started by distinguishing how do we engage the private sector and how do we regulate the private sector. The first question was, who was the private sector? Was it private hospitals or technology companies? In our group, we've mostly focused on the development side, a bit less on the hospital side. Some comments that were made that from some of our colleagues mentioned that it was difficult to align some of the incentives between public or private sector developers who have commercial incentives and the public. We spoke about the regulation. I guess then we're getting closer to solutions. Well, regulatory, I think there was an interesting point about different algorithms have different challenges. So you have probabilistic algorithms, which will always give you the same answer with the same data input. So those, I think, we can regulate. Within our group, we've discussed that as a medical device. That means that you can have clear standards of evidence. But the generative algorithms, they don't always give you the same answer based on the same input. So that is a particular challenge in terms of regulation. To add on to that, some of the things that we discussed is that because of those challenges, there's an important unmet need to monitor for adverse events. So that's post-clinical implementation, post-regulatory approval. So kind of a phase 4 trial for AI, if you will. Then there were some additional solutions shared by the group. One of our group members mentioned that it would be good for transparency and for engagement if many of the models are open source. However, it's difficult to implement because how can you move a private company to release their model into the public? But it would be a way to engage transparency. And I think at the end, this was one interesting notion was to perhaps think about public-private partnerships for AI. So for example, if you have algorithms trained in the US and you want to adapt those algorithms to fit the local context and you want to train it on local data, maybe there's something possible where you get data access, but at the same time, regulatory approval or easier market access. So this would be, and maybe the product could be at a cheaper price. So those are some of the things that we've discussed in our group.
Thank you. That's a really good, great summary. And if anybody from the private sector group would like to join us, we have one additional chair. So please feel free, be brave enough to stand up and join the panel. And I'll turn over to you.
Hello. Okay. I'm the representative of data sharing and data security groups. So first of all, because of the limit of time, so we have discussed 3 words that are quite similar but different. The first one is privacy. The word privacy means your information when it's still with you, is it your privacy, your data, your information. But the second word is confidentiality. Confidentiality means when you share to someone, for example, you are a doctor, and you trust him that your doctor will not spread your information to another person. So that is confidentiality, the second word. The third word is security. Security means in the system, like in the room, there's no one that can access to your data, that can hear what you are talking with your doctor. So the third word is security. I mean the whole system. So what next that we discuss is there are 2 themes in what we are talking about right now. The first one is research, and the second one is medical service. So in the research, I would say if you have more restricted regulations in your research, the research will not like kind of go on, and you cannot do anything if you have really restrict regulation in the research. Like for example, sharing with your co-authors in another institution, something like that. So in that way, I mean, in the research, you have to make really restrict of the security, but you have to let some kind of data privacy. For example, you can anonymize people, but you still know that this is the people number 1 from hospital number 1, and the same people go to hospital number 2, something like that. So I would say you have to less restriction in the research. But on the other way, in medical service, so patients in medical service. So in that way, patients that only want to like cure from the disease, and then so in that case, the objective you have to look at all of the regulations. I mean the data privacy, the confidentiality, and data security.
Yeah, and I think our panelists here, they've really actually laid out 3 different use cases, right? Research, clinical care, and then I think what Debbie started with was the online space, where the level of the types of use for AI and the level of regulation for AI actually are quite different, and they are also in different stages of establishment. And governance is able to the governance of it is actually also quite different, because the governance structures for research are very well established, and there is good adherence, right? But then on the far end of the spectrum, the governance for online use is not fully established, and for data use, that is. And also, I think there are major power imbalances because of the way the tech moguls are engaged in the ecosystem. So are there other points of view? I really welcome. I noticed that there's nobody from the $500 million group. So, we'll have a round of applause for whoever is brave enough to stand up and come to the stage. Well, somebody has to stand up.
We need the young people to come.
Come. Yes, we're going to have Leo volunteer somebody to come.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy. You can help. You are the future. Maybe two students. I think he has all the notes. I think you can. You have all the notes. Yeah. From memory.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. This from our 500 million group. So we are really thinking about how to invest money in education. So there are many suggestions that talk in our session we discussed. The main thing is about critical thinking. So the question about how do we make the newer generation from kindergarten until the college as a formal or informal education to add this for a critical thinking purpose. So mainly we discuss a lot about how we have to improve the critical thinking. As like nowadays, I think every model, every ChatGPT, they are pretty well in giving us information, but we cannot solely rely on them, because we have to think critically to make sure their answer are reflected our situation. So some of our participants suggested that about individual moral value have to be played. So we have to improve how we teach to our children, right? The teachers should change their approach in teaching. The teachers should have a different attitude. As I'm from an Asian region, most of our teaching are like the teacher is teaching and the student is listening. In the West, it's a different approach. So they are empowering critical thinking, but in Asia, we still live with that like teacher is teaching and student is listening approach. So we have to evolve ourselves to become more able to improve our student critical thinking. So this is something that we have to discuss in our group. And there are some interesting points that people are mentioning about ikigai or other way of thinking, and don't make creative ideas, making like a sandbox thinking.
Can you elaborate on ikigai?
Ikigai is a Japanese model of like improving your value. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be telling in detail. There is a book that recently published, so you guys can buy. I'm not promoting, but there is a book. It's not my book, so the person will be so happy, like I'm promoting his book. So there are principles like eating like medication, improving your morals. So these are things. So it's really interesting topic. So you guys should read as well. And as we also thinking about other different approaches, not only in school education, we also should think a little bit beyond the in school. Like nowadays things are more advanced. TikTok, young people don't watch like 1 hour of lecture. They just 5 minute. TikTok is more powerful than lecture. So we have to think innovative as well. Like TikToks, broadcasts can change the world nowadays. So podcasts are also important. So these are something that we discuss. I'm happy to, these are all my notes, so please feel free to involve or stand up and participate in our group. Yeah, you want to participate? Yeah.
Please come on up.
Yeah, come on.
Thank you. Okay, good. Yeah, and if others are done with their points, you're welcome as well to step off. There's no restriction. Please take a mic and have a seat.
No, please.
Here.
Okay, I just like to the details about the sandbox idea that we discussed, and we also have the other participants in our group that discussed. We think that the earlier that we start to learn since the kid is the way that we can create the robust person. So the sandbox is the life lesson, is the best companions and the advisors for the people since young until adult. So it's gonna simulate their situation because we think that the hard skill and the soft skill is learned from the problems. And the critical thinking is we're gonna have critical thinkings when we can solve the problem in the way and plan for the solution like plan A, plan B, plan C. So we use this one to in three perspective, which is the education, life lessons, and the relationship. So that we think that with the machine learning power, these two can develop person to live the life wisely. Yeah.
And really help grow critical thinking.
Yes, and also help critical thinking.
Great, thank you. I noticed, are we missing somebody from the last mile approaches group? Yes, please, we're waiting for one other person. No, how about both of you are welcome. Thank you. Yeah, please come on up. Thank you to our panelists. Please come on up. I'm really enjoying how when people come up. Please.
Would you like to start? Yeah. So I think there was a diverse view in our group. So some we started out with some parts believing a lot of to get things to reach the last mile comes from the responsibility of governments. But then we asked, what if there aren't governments? There are places that are unstable. So then who takes care of those places? And therefore there are agencies involved. But at the end, we also then leaped into, how about decentralized systems? How can we design systems such that it doesn't require substantial agency, but it can be started from some community initiatives, or even they might not be on their own, but actually through maybe Legos that have been already invested at global scales, or stuff that are available that they can then put together, and that could be part of some community initiatives, especially where governments are not having the best interest of their people, and that we know that those places exist, right? And I think there was a lesson sharing in Thailand, right? Where we're fortunate. I'm from Thailand, so I'm proud and fortunate enough that we have these entities in the communities that are working. Everyone is reached somehow. But I think there were shared conversations that we need these galvanizing entities. What was the technical term called? Community manager, I think, right? Because there is someone who is responsible, not responsible, but accountable, or know that there is someone to go to. There's an aggregation point to kind of manage and nudge people and have that community draw to actually bring things together. Yeah.
Just to add on to that, one of the things that we discuss is there are two sides of the coin, right? When you want to reach the last mile, it means that the community, we need to ask the community, do we need to reach those last mile? Number one, if we are using AI technology to reach the last mile, what are the technologies they are using? And do the community accept those technologies? So that's the side of the coin that we really emphasize. And at the same time, some of the infrastructure needs, like for example, I come from Myanmar. In Myanmar, like our health facilities are like 20% of the health facilities are being destroyed every 6 months. So in that case, if there is no health facility, what kind of technologies are we using? And if there is no internet connection, no cell towers are being destroyed every day. So in that case, those kind of infrastructure investment needs to come from the government. So at the start, we discuss about like policy needs to be in place, clear policy needs to be in place, so that we can create an enabling environment for those communities. And we also have to understand like there is a business case. Like for example, we are using Starlink in some of those areas. So maybe those kind of technology innovation can be acceptable for those communities if those communities accept them.
Thank you. And I think that's a really nice circle back, Alvin, to actually your presentation on gaps, right? Because I think a lot of what you articulated is around the people, processes, and architecture governance. So that was really great. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to our audience for humoring us, and also thank you to our many panelists for the take. Can we have another round of applause, please? And I think as a professor, I always ask people to provide feedback. I think I was asked to make sure that the audience does not leave without providing feedback. So you have 3 minutes, 52 seconds to scan this and provide feedback on the session. We won't get fired or rehired in this role. So you can keep it very free and open. And Professor Boonchai, I will ask you to have closing words and reflections in a minute, but I'm just giving you heads up.
I think thank you very much. I think we will 3 minutes and you can help us evaluate. Oh, okay. I take the liberty as the MC to given the token to the thank you for the panel. And you know we have some panelists that already be in another session, so the token have been taken. So the rest. Then first, I would like to give to Samicha, our co-moderator. Wow, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Lucy.
we already